Hi everyone. So I've literally been trying to upload this video for the past 3 hours, and in this crazy house of mine it just seems like one interruption after another. So I think it's finally quiet and I can get this done. The story that I'm going to give a summary on is called Jacked. It's one of the last stories in the book that we have. It's a story about a young kid named Jimmy who continually got picked on a lot during his school years. His dad was a retired Marine, so he didn't really think much of it, just kind of thought it was the rite of passage and kind of what boys did. But his mom, as a mom, was always concerned about it, and she wanted nothing more than protect her son. So Jimmy decided at the age of 14 that he was going to purchase a set of dumbbells, and he was going to start exercising at home and try to bulk up a little bit. After 2 months, he had more energy and had gained a few pounds. So he decided that he liked that and wanted to go try out the weight room at school. He met some other kids there who were always in there working out. Eventually one of the boys told him about a supplement that he could use that would help him bulk up even more. So Jimmy decided to try it. After about 18 months of working out and taking the supplements, Jimmy gained about 25 pounds of muscle, and at that point no one at school ever messed with him again. When he was getting ready to graduate high school, he told his parents that instead of going to college he wanted to go into the Marines. His mom was pretty disappointed with that, but his dad, being the retired Marine, thought that was a great thing, that he would be able to follow in his footsteps. Jimmy graduated high school and entered into the Marine Corps training department, where for 13 weeks he underwent mental and physical training. For most of the recruits there, the physical training was a bit difficult, but not for Jimmy. He was in such great shape that he succeeded fairly well with that, although he did struggle with the classwork. So with the help of some of his fellow recruits, Jimmy graduated basic training, and within 6 months he was supporting his troops in the Middle East as an infantryman. So even though Jimmy was deployed, that didn't really stop him much from exercising and working out. He continued to take the supplements. Some of the other Marines and Navy sailors had told him about a different supplement that he could take that was available for purchase at the Air Force Base Exchange. It was called Oxyjack. Oxyjack contained caffeine and an amphetamine, which was very different from the creatine and the glutamine and the amino acid and the proteins that he was taking with his typical supplement. He was worried that it was going to show up in the drug screenings that all of the armed forces personnel were required to take. But his service mates told him that they had been taking the Oxyjack and that they were fine with the tests. Jimmy began taking the Oxyjack before his workouts in the weight room and found that it gave him a lot more energy, which allowed him to work out longer and lift even more weights than he ever was able to previously. One Saturday morning, Jimmy began experiencing some chest pains in the weight room. Jimmy tried to stand up, but he fell forward and landed on the gym floor mat. Across the gym, one of his fellow mates ran over to try to help him. He began to call the ship's medic, but only got the answering machine. So he decided to go run and get the medic. It was about 10 minutes before the ship doctor arrived, and with CPR and being shocked 3 times by the defibrillator, it was too late. Jimmy was pronounced dead. He was only 20 years old at the time of his death. Jimmy's body was sent to the ship's morgue, where they did some extensive investigating into what had caused his death. He was in excellent physical condition and nobody could understand what had happened. His body then was sent back to the U.S., where an autopsy was performed by the Armed Forces medical examiner. Upon examination, everything seemed to be normal. Jimmy was in great shape. They did find one exception for where they found that there was an 80% blockage in one of the arteries that delivered blood to the heart. A tox screen was done, and it was negative for all drugs that were tested by the lab. The medical examiner concluded that Jimmy died of cardiac arrest induced by an acute heart attack. As one would guess, Jimmy's dad was not satisfied with the conclusion that Jimmy died of a heart attack, being that he was so young. So he called the California Poison Control Center, where medical reports were requested and sent over, and they all appeared to be within the healthy limits, and there was no family history of cardiovascular disease. So with all this info, the only other thing to do was to investigate into a possibility that a drug could have caused the heart attack. Heart attacks are naturally caused by a rupture of plaque that has built up within an artery. But because Jimmy was so young, and young people don't often have enough time to develop a significant amount of plaque, heart attacks were usually caused by the sudden narrowing of blood vessels, which sometimes people who may happen to be born with these narrow blood vessels. But after further investigation, it was concluded that this was certainly not the case for Jimmy. Even though the Armed Forces Tox Lab did find small amounts of caffeine in the test on Jimmy, they decided it was time to look further, and it was discovered that a drug similar to methamphetamine was found in his system, which may have caused the constricting of the blood of his arteries. The drug found within Jimmy's system was referred to as DMAA, which is found in supplements to boost energy. These are legal and used by many in the armed forces. Jimmy's dad knew of several of his friends who were using Oxyjack, which contained the DMAA, and in doing some research found out that there were other military men who collapsed or even died from it. Jimmy's dad and other families of the men who collapsed and died wrote letters to the U.S. military in hopes of getting Oxyjack and other similar products removed from the commissaries. It ends up that in 2011, the U.S. Department of Defense, as a precautionary measure, halted the sale of these products containing the DMAA from their commissaries, and although still remains legal. As a result of the DOD's decision, a class action lawsuit was filed in 2012 against the manufacturer of the supplements. I found this to be super interesting because I know there are a lot of young people who are very focused on their physique and wanting to look good. I know many kids here in my community who have tried supplements and are still using supplements, and I just wish this was something that was more talked about, even amongst high school and college-aged kids. About the dangers. They may not produce any different drug test results. I know that's big for kids, and especially when they are in school or going for a job or starting a career. So I just, it's a shame that things like this happen to good kids. Most of them are really good kids who just end up making a bad decision. But anyway, that's my review. Thanks.